Are you ready to explore exciting careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies? Then join me, your podcast host, Dr. Milena Krastenskaya, or simply Dr. K, and my amazing guests on the Neurocareers Doing the Impossible podcast. Discover what it takes to turn the impossible into reality. Tune in now to a thrilling episode number 52. Dear Neurocareers podcast listeners, welcome to our new podcast episode where we explore the fascinating world of neurotechnologies and their impact on our lives. Today, we're thrilled to have Roel Heremans, the concept and artist director at Studio Roel Heremans, as our guest. Roel and his team are pushing the boundaries of art and neurotechnologies by designing a series of 5 installations that make the 5 NeuroRights developed by Columbia University tangible for participants. With the use of real-time BCI and headphones, participants are guided through an aesthetic experience where their mental state is transparent and malleable. Join us as we delve into Roel's transdisciplinary art practice, his vision for the future of NeuroRights, and the unique challenges he and his team have faced while creating this cutting-edge project. You don't want to miss this exciting episode. Welcome, Roel. It's a great pleasure to have you on our podcast. And can you please introduce yourself and tell where you're joining us from and give some introduction about yourself? And also, please pronounce your name more correctly than I do so that our listeners would be familiar with the correct pronunciation.
Yes, thank you. Milena, first of all, thanks for the nice introduction. And it's always nice to hear my name in all sorts of possible ways spoken out. And of course, it's nice. And thank you for inviting me to the podcast. So, yeah, the way my mother says my name is Roel Heremans. My name is a Flemish name. I'm originally from the north side of Belgium, close to Brussels. Maybe people know that, Brussels, capital of Belgium. Right now, I'm in Sweden, in Stockholm. And yeah, I am a transdisciplinary artist working with sound, imagination, neurofeedback, new technologies, but especially trying to find a balance between, let's say, sensitive and humanitarian human aspects within new technologies. My latest project, the NeuroRights Arcades, is really about that. It's investigating the ethical implications of upcoming neurotechnology.
That's so fascinating. What I was thinking about, if you think that that would be an approach to introduce your project to our listeners, maybe you can guide us through your exhibition, through NeuroRights Arcade, so that we would get a feel of what it is. Like we would come to the exhibition and see it and experience it for yourself, as much as it's possible, of course, in the podcast interview.
Yeah. Okay, I will try my best to describe it with a lot of colors and forms so the mind's eye of the listener is stimulated. So the installations that I made is basically you come into a room and you see these black dystopian looking arcade machines. You see, I'm a 90s kid. And when I was young, I really looked forward, or I really enjoyed going to these Luna parks or these arcade halls where you could play all these fast pacing games and just press all the buttons at once and hear all the sounds and all the input. And so for me, that's the first the first layer that people get. They see these arcade machines, and in most cases, people have the urge to go there and to play on them. But maybe the second glance is like, okay, this arcade machine doesn't have all the vivid colors. They're black. They're like black, mysterious, like a little bit like a black box. They look like a smartphone in a way, like a mix between an iPhone and like a 90s arcade machine. And so you go up to these machines and you see a symbol on the screen that says, put on these headphones that are hanging above the screen. And so you put them on and you notice that the headphones you're wearing have special pins, special electrodes on the top of the headphone that connect with your skull. And what is that? And that gets explained a bit more during the installation. It's basically an EEG sensor or a brain computer interface. And so basically that's the starting point, right? You see 5 different arcade machines next to one another. And when you go to one of them, you put on the headphone, you press a button, then the, let's say, 7-minute interactive installation starts, where there's a voice that asks you, first the voice greets you, and then the voice asks you to close your eyes and to really imagine specific things about yourself. And near the end of the experience, you notice that basically the installation guided you through some philosophical, ethical questions that you might have today that will also be important in the future. And in the end, and this is kind of what I really try to put in the installation, is in the end you can scan a QR code and you can have a print of your own recorded brainwaves during the installation. And so for a lot of people, this is very interesting and very, wow, cool. But I hope somehow that some people might have, how can I say, a quite uncanny feeling near the end. Because what the installation did, it warned you for the ethical trespassings of new neurotechnology, but at the same time, it was doing it itself. And in this kind of, let's say, intellectual or metaphysical or meta construction, I tend to stimulate some of the visitors.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And what actually captured my attention is something that is dealing with the imagination of the person.
Yes.
What you said, to stimulate a person's imaginations, his thought process.
Yes.
With some guidance, but that's the main point. This is something I think proves a point that neurotechnologies and in general technology doesn't mean that we are taking a power of imagination from people, because this is something that many people are complaining about. They're saying all the technology, yes, it just takes our imagination away because everything is already there outside. We're playing all the games, we're engaged in the movies, we're engaged in all those sensations, and this is all already provided, yes, to us. So people don't imagine anymore. Yes, there are complaints about that. But actually, what you are doing, you are taking this very unique approach to actually show that we can use the technology, but actually to help us even develop that imagination, to get inside ourselves, to start asking certain questions, to start thinking. Yes, so what brought you to this concept?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question what you say, Milena, because these are things that I've been dealing with for a long time. Because it is true that working with the imagination is sometimes quite tricky because it doesn't have the same pace that new technologies or video games have. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make a balance where it looks quite fast paced, and then if you look at it from the theories of Ian McGilchrist, who has this book about the 2 brain hemispheres, the way I see my own work right now is like the outer layer is very much light, left hemisphere, left hemisphere, left hemisphere. And when you completely are in, it asks you to really work on your right hemisphere, on your imagination. And it's very interesting that you say so, Milena, because I think it is challenging to find new forms where the imagination of the people that come to see artworks are really triggered. And it's an interesting question, because another main reason why I'm using really the imagination, or I'm triggering this imagination, is because ethical frameworks and ethical rights, we always have the feeling it comes from an higher order. Like, okay, some people decide this, and then we adapt to these new rules. But actually, rules for new technologies, for example, we make them together. We make them together by thinking about them, by imagining, and about talking about them. And so this, brain computer interface or new neurotechnology, they're coming up, but they're not really there yet. So I'm trying to evoke some kind of discussion about them. What does it mean to have free will? What does it mean to have, like mental privacy or something? Do we really need this? And I'm hoping to stir a conversation about this with the use of imagination. But it is true; it's a very interesting question. It's always like a balance to have. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's beautiful that you are trying to balance both, and this very playful component, yes, to
Mm.
draw people in and then bring
Yeah.
them
Yes.
deep inside themselves to start thinking. And also, what I like about your approach, you are saying that the ethics questions, it's not something that is just brought to us from administration. Yes, somebody just decided and told us what to do, which people, of course, then simply dismiss very often. Yes. But actually, it's something that can come from our own understanding of what's happening. And you're bringing people to start questioning and thinking about that and, possibly discussing. And it's very important because definitely those ethical questions will concern many people in the future as neurotechnologies are developing.
Yep.
So now my question is, what specific ethical questions start working on this conversation, on this discussion?
Let's start from the beginning. I've been making a lot of works that trigger the imagination of the visitor. I called them interactive imagination compositions, and it was basically a lot of headphone pieces where I asked people to imagine specific things. Like, you can tell them, "Hey, close your eyes. Maybe remember your living room from when you were growing up, and remember this or that," and etc. And when I started really playing with personal imagination and then brain computer interfaces, or things that measure your brain waves, I started thinking about the ethical parts, and especially in relation to social media. I'm a 90s. I was really one of the first ones in my group circle that had Facebook, and I was so stoked, to be connected to the world via social media platforms. But actually, in the last 10 years, we've seen that some things that look nice from the start can have, like, I'm not going to say dystopian characteristics, but at least, like, like it can slightly tip sometimes when Facebook decided to start selling the user data, for example. And then, okay, and in the same way, I was thinking about the same parallel. Like, I was using new neurotechnology or brain computer interfaces from a sort of naive artistic standpoint, like, wow, what is possible with this, and can I start doing this, etc., etc. And then I was thinking, like, hey, but isn't the same parallel going to happen? Like, shouldn't we already think about what if, sorry for my saying, but what if hits the fan? Like, shouldn't we be prepared for this new world where I don't know, yeah, you have user data, but isn't brain data way more dangerous to be just out there in the digital field? And so I started doing some research about the ethical framework surrounding this question, and I stumbled upon the NeuroRight Foundation by the Columbia University. And although how can I say, it's a super interesting framework with their 5 NeuroRights that in a world where neurotechnology is everywhere, we should have the NeuroRight, or the right for mental privacy, for personal identity, for free will, for equal access to mental augmentation, and for protection against algorithmic bias. So these 5 NeuroRights are so deep and clustered. There are so many other questions laying behind them. As an artist, I didn't want to just say like, hey, look at the world, we should adapt these rules, they're super great. I'm more like, they're very interesting and they open up so many new questions that I somehow want to share with an audience. And so I think that's what I've been doing with my latest work, the NeuroRight Arcades. It's make a very approachable object or installation that people can engage with. And, on the first level, it's just a nice experience. It asks you some question. When was the last time you lied? What is the biggest secret somebody has told you? But on a deeper level, it really asks you these philosophical, ethical questions like, okay, like what if a computer has this information? Would it be good for you that everybody knew what big secrets you have from somebody else? Or would it be good for you if a computer knows every little lie you ever made? And so from having like these very simple particular questions, I try to provoke a sort of thinking about why we need such rules or why not. I'm not going to advocate for them, but I think like let's talk about this because it's time.
Yes, absolutely. And this brought me to the next question. After you described the installation itself, now I would like to ask you to describe a participant of your installation, and a participant at the beginning of the installation when they just come and start this experience, and after they finish it. I'm sure you have some record of that. I'm sure you talk to people and they also talk to you about their experience. So, can you give us this illustration of what happens?
Yes. So you have in general you have 2 types of visitors: the ones that go all in, they see the arcade and they go all in without asking too much questions. And these persons will discover some of the content while going, and then maybe they do a second one, and afterwards they read a bit more about what was it. And I think those people have a nice time, I think, because it's like, I think the installations are very layered, and so they get the first layer, the second layer, etc., etc. Now, then you have other kinds of visitors that are a bit distant. They want to see what it is before they engage, and of course, most of these visitors, they first want some information, like, hey, what am I gonna engage in here? And which is also a good question, right? Because the installation is warning people about the dangers or the possible dangers of neurotechnology and brain computer interfaces, and why we should or should not have neuro rights or ethical rights connected to them. So of course it's good that they kind of from a distance have to know, like, okay, what's gonna go on here. But what I've noticed, and I'm very happy about that, is that a lot of people who are engaged to really do it, they go in a sort of very immersed mode where they really delve in their own imagination. And when they come out, they have a very satisfied feel, especially because in the end, they can scan their own specific a personal QR code that leads them to a personal image of their brain activity during the installation, which is somehow a present, but also kind of a poisonous present. because in a way it's proving also that, hey, look, you've been going through this nice audiovisual work. Hey, but look, this is what we recorded and potentially saved from you, which is, and that's a big disclaimer. That's also what I tell people is nothing is saved. This is purely symbolic to show you how easy it is, but be aware.
Yeah, yeah, that's a beautiful idea behind all of this, and I love how you added all those layers to bring people from very superficial, everything is flashy and interesting, down to these thoughts and questions that they can ponder on. So now I would like to ask you about the way you came to neurotechnologies. And you started from art. Yes, you're an artist. So, can you tell our listeners about your path into the arts and what type of arts actually you became interested in until you met neurotechnologies?
Yes, yes. Well, that's a good question. I really have a very specific story about this. So I'm 32 now. When I was 19 years old, so already some time ago, near Brussels, I was on a bike and I was hit by a car quite harshly, because after the accident, or just like during the accident, I suffered two brain hemorrhages, a fractured skull, and a broken spine. And I went in coma for a week. And that's kind of how it all started, in a way. Doctors gave me not a lot of chance to survive the crash, and if so, in what condition, as a plant, or as something with way less cognitive abilities. And for a second, doctors were arguing to perform brain surgery on me, but then it tipped over to just, okay, let's just wait it out, and we hope that because of his young age, the excess blood will get out of his brain. So after that accident, I woke up a week later, but my short-term memory was gone. My logics were gone. My fine motoric skills were gone. Coordination was very bad. And I had a specific form of aphasia. And so during that period, of course, I can be very lucky that I survived that accident. But somehow, of course, during the revalidation or during the recovery, I had all sorts of EEG, fMRI scans, a lot of them. And obviously, I had to retrain my cognitive skills like reading, writing, talking, walking, and other things. Now, something happened during that recovery, because it's still something that I'm searching answers to. And that is, during that recovery, I felt really, really good. I felt spiritually deep connected to nature, to art, to, I mean, it's very weird, but before I was, let's say, a normal kid, playing football, going to high school, very social. And after that accident, I had a new kind of way of seeing the world. I had these two brain hemorrhages. And okay, like now I found out something. I mentioned you the book I'm now reading, The Matter with Things, from Ian McGilchrist. And in that book, I maybe found a reason for that. I told you that I had a left brain hemorrhage of the left hemisphere, where basically the language center is, they call it the broca or brocha side. And this specifically, what I've read in the book now, is that in some cases, this can result in an like, let's say, stimulation or a disinhibition of the right hemisphere, which is connected. And he gives a lot of examples in the book of a lot of people that became very artistic minded after they had an accident, and specifically a left hemisphere liaison or hemorrhage where the language center is. So basically, after this moment, I really, really was almost obsessed by finding a language in which I could kind of share some of the things I started perceiving. And another really weird thing that happened during the recovery is I was walking through the little town near Brussels in Belgium, Europe, and a car. I had like a neck bracelet on, and there's a car stopping next to me, and he asks me, "Are you that boy that got hit by that car a few months ago?" And I said, "Yes." And what followed then was quite an intense moment. The guy got out of his car. We sat down somewhere on a bench, and he slowly explained to me that he was there. He was on the side of the road, and he had seen everything happen. And for him, it was a very traumatic experience because he really thought that he had seen a young boy, a young adult, die that day. And so for him, it was quite a flabbergasted experience to see this, to see first that I recovered, that I survived, but at the same time, he kind of had to ventilate this trauma to me. But what he didn't know is that, of course, I don't remember anything of the accident. This is how the brain works, it shuts off. And on that day, this person gave me for the first time a description of what happened, like literally of what happened, how I flew through the air, how I landed, how I was looking. And he didn't know that he actually gave me for the first time an image of that very important moment in my life that I somehow have forgotten. And after that, I realized that that is actually what I've been doing in most of my artistic works. I ask people to imagine specific situations that they might have forgotten, that are sometimes blissful, sometimes poetic, mysterious, and also sometimes even painful. And so, that's how I started making my interactive imagination compositions.
Thank you so much, Rule, for sharing with us this difficult experience, very difficult experience, but also showing how what you are doing now was shaped by it.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
Yes, and how you were able to see this tool of imagination, yes, that can offer new perspectives on things that people maybe forgot or even didn't have a chance, yes,
Yes,
to have or to
absolutely.
experience. Yeah. So, can you tell us about your art where you were exploring imagination? What was that? What forms did you take? Were these exhibitions? Were these installations? So, can you give us some examples of how you used that imagination before you found neurotechnologies?
I think I was studying in the Netherlands then, and I was thinking about, okay, like we all have these physical experiences, right? The grass underneath our feet, the smell of wet clay, the sun that is shining in our eyes. We all have these very specific experiences that can be described via language. Of course, it's like somehow a naive question. And I was thinking, okay, like how can I really recreate that, like just not a narrative, but just a kind of juxtaposing of the recreation of physical experiences. So I started doing some experiments, and I gave people a headphone in a very dark space. And there was, of course, from the start I worked together with voice actors and voice actresses, because I think the way the voice is used to put forward specific words in a specific timbre, it really can influence how you can imagine specific things. So I started doing some experiments, and I found it was not only successful, but it really touched some people, as if I I kind of discovered some capacity that nobody was using anymore. And it is somehow true because, who back in the 50s, back in the 60s, families would listen to radio dramas on the radio and then use their imagination to construct, the stories, the protagonists inside their head. Or when you're reading a book, you're also somehow using your mind's eye to construct the protagonist, etc. And of course, now in a world where everything is driven by interactive, gamified, audiovisual applications, the use of imagination is somehow, I'm not going to say forgotten, but at least it's being used in a way less deep or concise way. And so I started doing these experiments, and very quickly I noticed, okay, this really has an influence, and I can, you can write a book, you can make a podcast, what you are very successfully doing, Milena, or you can make an audiovisual work. But what I was trying to do, and again, this is coming from a kind of naive possibility, is like, okay, this very deep imagination, because of course if you read a book, it's about a protagonist, you imagine something of a protagonist. But what can I make if I stimulate the imagination of the listener, and it's not about an external thing, but it's about themselves? If I can make them imagine specific memories, specific future constructions, and I make it together with other people so I know which person is imagining what, how can they then meet each other in a zone that is somehow in between past, present, and future? And I know it sounds pretty vague or philosophical, and at the time it really did for me as well. But I just started doing tests and tests and tests, and I just noticed that not only I could go very far with that, but also I could create situations for visitors that they had never discovered for themselves, to really touch very deep snares that they thought they had forgotten. And so this is the way how I got to making a lot of installations or interactive imagination compositions that I've been doing, just trying to find very fragile and small poetic moments that normally you could never experience in everyday life.
Yes, absolutely. In everyday life, when we're so busy with other things, we rarely take time just to sit and think about something and imagine, go into our past, imagine our future. And you created that opportunity or opportunities to pause for a moment, yes, and experience that, which can be very powerful.
Yes, yes.
That also brings me to some of the commentaries of people who are writing about the new generations of people that are living life today during our days, that many young people approach the life slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
And if in the past or earlier generations, people were mostly centered on owning something, yes, having, a car or, of course, a house, and as much as they can. The new approach is actually not to own things, and many young people, they prefer not to have a car but rather use a bike, to minimize the expenses that they would invest in owning something, but rather have unique experiences. So people are more willing, to travel, to get to know something, to experience something new and different, rather than invest time and finances into having something material. So I think this approach that you are using is in line with this new wave of people paying attention to slightly different and maybe very different things, yes, than many used to have. So, what do you think about this? Do you see any tendencies, especially as you interact with people who already come to your installations and what they report?
Okay, yeah, that's a very interesting way of approaching what that question or that observation from your side triggered for me is that maybe this has also to do with like a neoliberal capitalistic system that is evolving. Yeah, the economy is more evolving towards in Flemish you would say diensten. Don't know how to say it in English. But so, and also I think a lot of people that are around me, at least, a lot of people think more about the ecological imprint of the things we own and the things we do in life. And so a lot of people I talk to, they don't want to have a car just because it's taking up more space. It is creating more carbon dioxide. It's not good for the environment. And so a lot of choices, including my choices more and more, are have to do with, okay, how can my presence on this planet have the least impact on the situation with the planet right now? But at the same time, I think it's true that it's a tendency that I also have seen to go from very materialist kind of thinking to, I don't know, a transcendent thinking. I don't know how to frame that, but I think that might be something that you were referring to. I think in art, at least, that is the thing that stays. It's the experience you have at that specific moment, and triggering that for the visitors was always for me the most important thing. Of course, if you think about art as in an art market, of course then you will have more a materialistic point of view, because when some people that are not in the arts, when they ask me what do you do, I tell them I'm an artist, and the second question is mostly, are you a painter, or are you a sculptor? And this is because most people see the art world as still kind of a materialistic market where it's the transaction of expression forms that generate money, which is a completely wrong way in my opinion to see the thing. Because for me, art is very good at creating an unexpected, deep and profound way of reconnecting or seeing things in a different and in a new view, let's say.
Yes, absolutely. And you found this very unique language, yes, in art by using imagination and exploring different levels. Thank you for sharing all this. And we had actually already one artist that talked about her experience with neurotechnologies, and she also has very philosophical questions that she tries to explore by combining art and neurotechnologies. Can you tell our listeners when your first encounter with the neurotechnologies happened? So, when you got that additional brush into your tool set, into your language of art that came from neurotechnologies?
Yes, as I mentioned before, somehow the use of neurotechnology or brain computer interfaces, it was kind of quite there already when just after I had the accident, the quite harsh accident where that basically started my artistic career. There were a lot of EEG, fMRI scans that I had to do in order to test if my cognitive abilities were still there. Now, that's why after these quite some years doing experiments and making works with just imagine the triggering of the imagination and creating some kind of poetic space for the visitors, I was thinking like, okay, this is somehow a natural, at least for me, it seems logical to start working with brain computer interfaces, because it's like, if you want to research what you have to do in the future, you just have to research your past, right? It's kind of a thing that is very central for me, and since my whole artistic journey came from that accident, it's researching what was there that gives me answers. Yeah, and that's maybe a very spiritual way of approaching that, but it works for me. But so the first experiments I tried was with the Muse. Maybe you know this EEG device. It was one. I think it might have been one of the first consumer EEG devices that you could just like attach to a computer and start experimenting with. So we did some research with that. Then we had the Next Mind. That was a company from Paris in France that could connect your visual cortex in a very cool way with video games. I think they're not French owned anymore. They were taken over by another company. Very interesting. But it never. I think this BCI never got off the ground in some way. And for the installation that I made, the NeuroRights Arcades, I've been using the Enophone from a Canadian company that basically made quite a decent noise canceling headphone with a brain computer interface built in. And so for my purpose, that was ideal to make it to have an interactive installation that could tour museums and art festivals. So these were the first 3 BCIs that I started working with. I am very interested, of course, to start working with more BCIs. There's the unicorn from GM Tech, I think they're called, from in Austria and Europe. There is, of course, the collaboration between OpenBCI and Varjo from Finland. They made the Galea, which is, I believe, I mean, I haven't tested it, but I believe it's the best technological combination of a VR headset and a brain computer interface. It's at this moment it costs $25,000 or euros. I think it's the same now. So I would really love to do some experiments with that. So if anybody's listening of OpenBCI, you can always get in touch. But I will be continue working with the kind of the combination of personal imagination, brain computer data or brain data generated by brain computer or researched by brain computer interfaces, and then gamification and just creating a poetic landscape, basically.
Mhm. Yes, thank you very much. And those companies that you mentioned and their products, Unicorn by GTech. Actually, our first Neurocareers podcast was done by Dr. Christoph Guger, who established this company, and we had a recent interview with him, and also Eva Esteban, who was talking about Gali and about that project, which also has very interesting history behind it. So, yes, if
Cool.
I wish you definitely to have this opportunity to work with this technology. I'm sure there will be a lot of insights.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And of course, with everything new and you're establishing, I would say, a new field of a new area of experience between art and neurotechnologies. With all of those new things come challenges. Yes.
Yes.
It's always challenging to start something new. So, what were the biggest challenges for you creating this installation of NeuroRights Arcades, and how did you solve them? What helped you to solve those challenges?
There were a lot of challenges, that's for sure. It was a long process where I worked together with, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 people, going from scientists to woodworkers to programmers to you name it. I think one of the challenges of the concept in general was, how will I bring something so abstract, which is speculative ethical frameworks for a technology that is coming up but not there yet, which is very abstract, you know? How do I bring those things to a level that is digestible on a very first level, but then if people are engaged and really want to know more, they can delve in more. That was for me the biggest challenge. Like, how can I make something that really communicates from the first glance an interesting approach to this? That was the very, very biggest challenge. So very, very quickly, I decided to call the installation the NeuroRight Arcades, which is an interesting mix of words, right? Because which arcade talks about rights and what are neurorights. The title of the work itself generates questions, but is also, you know, it hopefully triggers some people, and especially the way it looks, you know, in art. I mean, I am really, of course, focused on the experience of the visitors itself, but there's always an aspect of when people see your piece of art, or even if it's performative, or even if it's, I don't know, something else, the first glance or the first image that people have is always very important. And I think for me that was also quite important, that these NeuroRight arcades, these arcades that look very slick but mysterious and inviting at the same time, that was quite the challenge to get to. Of course, another challenge that we worked on very much is it generates all these ethical questions, but at the same time, it is also trespassing these questions. And you know, I had the possibility to record all the brainwaves, store them, and with this stored information, with these stored brainwaves, I could potentially make, you know, a new work, like to really compare all the data, like how many people did this, how many people did that, or how did somebody perform, etc., etc. But I just decided not to do that because I think that was just a bridge too far. I think the installation in itself questions so many things in a symbolic way, but if I really go over it and I really collect that data and I'm really like on a dystopian way, completely trespassing the trust of the visitors, that was too much. So these were maybe two of the most of the biggest challenges I had to face in the creation of the installations.
Mhm. And what helped you to overcome those challenges? What approaches did you take, or how did you help yourself to make this possible, this installation possible?
Yeah, I think testing, thinking, talking to people, and you know, uh, it's like in the process, you are the artist, so you are the responsible for the end product. I mean, it's not a product, the end artwork, right? But in that process, because you don't have all the skills yourself to completely do everything in the process, so in the process you have a lot of encounters with different kind of people with different approaches, and you talk to them and you I don't know, try to stay humble and try to ask some people out, and then just follow a sort of a gut feeling, like, okay, to which people I will listen to, which advice will I say, okay, thank you, but maybe I go a bit further. So yeah, I think to overcome the challenges, it's a lot of reflection, and don't make decisions too hastily or to follow your gut, and listen, be humble, try to listen to as many people as possible.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And can you also share with our listeners what are your future plans? Where do you want to go from here, from your NeuroRights Arcades? Are you planning to expand on NeuroRights Arcades, or do you have some new projects already in plans?
For now, since the installation is quite new, the installation was premiering on the Ars Electronica Festival in Austria. Some say the most prestigious media arts festival in the world. It's an enormous organization that is super interesting, that have the festival, but also the Future Lab and also the museum or the Ars Electronica Center. So it was premiering there, and now they actually decided to buy one of the installations, or to acquire at least one of the NeuroRight arcades. So if listeners want to try it out, that will be possible, like permanently in Austria, in Linz. Besides that, I will show the arcades with an artist talk in Brussels on a big medical congress, which is called Medische Wereld by VUB Crosstalks. After that, I will have a solo exhibition in Brussels. And after that, they will be showing the 5 installations in a very new and cool museum in Ghent, in Belgium as well, which is called GUM, Gens Universitair Museum. They will be there for 3.5 months during the whole summer. So if you never visited Ghent, this beautiful, beautiful, picturesque medieval city in Belgium, it would be wonderful to go in the summer and to visit the museum. That's a nice trip to do. Now, for the future, I'm very interested in keep on working with brain computer interfaces, of course. And I have been talking to a lot of people in this new and upcoming neurotechnology world, especially like people like Nita Farahani. She's the writer of this book that will be coming out, The Battle for Your Brain. Nita and I have had a very interesting call together, and we basically somehow have a similar approach to these new questions, to these new ethical questions that are coming up. We're still like discussing if and where we will do a collaboration. Of course, she will be talking, especially in the States, but worldwide, on her new book. And I mean, these discussions surrounding ethical rights and neurotechnologies is very important. And maybe in the future we will see collaboration. Who knows? But yeah, I'm thinking in the future to be working more with more advanced brain computers interfaces. I'm really hoping to get my hands on the Open BCI Galea. I'm really looking forward to use that brain computer interface, and also to try out some things with video games and brain computer interfaces. I think that's an interesting, and also the ethics surrounding, especially gamification and neurotechnology, is something that is also very interesting for me. And maybe my next project will be somehow dealing with these topics, I think.
Thank you so much for sharing your accomplishments and future perspective, and congratulations on all the success you already had with this installation. I want to visit Ars Electronica Festival very much. I've been to Linz when visiting GTEC company in Austria, but I've never been to this festival, and I've heard so many interesting things about it. And I think that's quite an accomplishment to have your installation there, one of your booths there permanently. It's a wonderful way for people to visit and experience it. And thank you for mentioning Kent in Belgium. I haven't heard about this, but I think from what you described, it's a beautiful place to visit and also get familiar with your work. So thank you for mentioning all of that. And the gaming world is amazing, and it provides more and more opportunities between the merge of neurotechnologies, gaming, and if there is art involved here to bring people again to contemplating and imagining and discovering something new. That's amazing. And I will be on the lookout for your new projects. I just want to mention that we also had a very interesting podcast with Diego Saldivar on the gaming brain and neuro games. So it's, possible, maybe even collaboration opportunities. So thank you. And now I would like to go from your plans and your perspective on the development between art and neurotechnologies, brain computer interfaces, and the general role of artists, of designers in shaping the future of neurotechnology and brain computer interfaces. So, what do you think is their role in this development?
That's a very dense and complicated question, I must say. I think in the last 10 to 20, maybe way longer years, I think the world had the idea that digitalizing all qualitative data was a very good idea. But somehow that has had a lot of implications on not only our thinking, but also our way of being in the world. And what I notice now is that more and more artists, and especially like, let's say, media artists or digital artists, are somehow asked to make something qualitative from the quantitative data that people have acquired from qualitative data in the world. And I think that's a very interesting thing that says something about the future role of artists, I think. You know, artists were the people per se, or the people specifically that really dealt with, I believe, qualitative things within the world and try to depict that or try to conceptualize or meditate around it. And in a world where more and more qualitative data is digitalized, artists are now being asked to transform that digitalized data back into a qualitative experience. And I think that is not only interesting, but also, will this be the answer to everything? That's sometimes a question that I'm asking myself. Will the qualitative data that an artist gets out of the digitalized data from, I don't know, data sets, companies, whatever, in this transformation to a new qualitative experience, will we get to an experience that equals the qualitative data that was there from the beginning, the raw qualitative data of our world, not even the data, but the experience that is present within our world? Maybe this is a very vague, but that's kind of the things that I'm thinking about lately.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. So, if I understand correctly, the examples of what you are saying are, first of all, the qualitative data. It might be brain activity associated with our experiences, with imagination, imagining things, with remembering things, thinking about certain things, yes, and we're transforming it into digital data, which is a EEG signal. And what the artist asked at the moment to do to bring already that EEG data into certain experiences, into certain qualitative expressions, which can be, let's say, music. Yes, how people are creating music based on EEG data. It can be a video installation or visualization. This can be sensory experience, yes, somatosensory experience, how that brain activity feels in the body. Yes, so, and what you are saying that this, of course, can be just some representations of that, but not the full extent of what was initially there. Yes?
Yeah. I think what you give there as an example is a more specific. What I had as a specific example is you have a river, let's say the Amazon River, and the experiencing of being there next to the river and experiencing that river running by. Now, imagine that every drip of water or the quantity of that water is digitalized in numbers in a data set, right? And as an artist, you make something that does something with the information of the data that is passing that point. Will you ever come out in whatever way, come out with something that is more than the experience of just standing next to the river? I think that's the metaphor that I was searching for.
Mhm. Yeah, so the future will will show, but it's also important, and I think you address this in your installation to remember that that experience of the river for each person will be different.
Yes, that's also true. Yeah.
Yes, so it's individualized, and maybe neurotechnologies also help us to look not only on our experiences, but also to bring closer experiences of other people, because now we can witness not only how, at least partially, we experience that river, but we also can see how other people experience the river. Yes, maybe partially, like I'm saying, it will be, in a sound, or in maybe even emotions. Yes, in some sensation. So even smell. Yes, but we can actually, through the technology and neurotechnology, experience not only how we approach it, but other people as well. Because with neurotechnology, we can even stimulate certain regions of the brain to have the experiences that other people are having. Yes, so it's not completely maybe available right now, but this is where the field is going.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and some people are talking about the dream sharing as well. Yes, that we will be able at some point to share our dreams, and maybe, some social platforms we will have that our people can do dream sharing, and maybe, other experience sharing. Yes, and in this
Yeah.
way. So,
Can I ask
yeah.
you one question, Milena?
Yeah.
Do you think the brain is more like an analog computer or a digital computer?
That's a very good question. No, I think we are digitizing already with our technology, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely we have an analog signal that then is being digitized. But another question: do we think, in a way? Is the next question more philosophical? Yes. How we think in a system where we have only two options, how, the signal was digitized, zero and ones. Yes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and general coding. So everything or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
If we are employing just simple logic, yes, analogy, or we have this possibility of fuzzy logic, where we see all the abundance of options, yes, and
Mm-hmm.
the different things in between.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our world is moving towards the second one, at least. I
Mm-hmm.
hope so. So.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah. Okay, very good, very good. And so we're nearing the end of our podcast, and I always ask our guests one question is about doing the impossible. So maybe you can recall something that you thought of as impossible, but later it proved to be possible. And what helped to make that impossible possible for you?
I don't want to romanticize that, of course, but I think it has something to do with surviving the accident that I had, and then using it as a force to continue, and the force that keeps on driving. I think, like inverting, using a trauma to build momentum. I think. Is that an answer to your question?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. For those listeners who are interested in your work and what you do, or who want to connect with you, maybe for some collaboration, what would be the best way to learn about what you do and also the way to connect with you?
So there are different options. You can go to my website, which is Roel Heremans, ROELHEREMANS.com. And I'm also on all social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn is also a good way to approach me. And especially, I made these installations, these art installations that are easy to transport, and so they're plug and play, and they can be a good addition to a symposium or an academic get together. It's an interesting thing to do at the site where people can have discussions about. So that's maybe a thing I want to share with the listeners as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I hope our listeners are hearing that. And I would love to see your installations at the different scientific events. And I'm sure our listeners will get a lot of insights of participating in this type of installation. So thank you very much for mentioning that. And before we end our podcast, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners or give any advice? Anything you would like to say?
No, I think the thing I wanted to say is the thing that I just mentioned, that if it would be interesting on to be put these installations to be put on somewhere Congress, you can always contact me and we can discuss about that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.